what the end game and launch out, and especially Deep Desert looks like, and what it's for, and how people will use the Deep Desert, and how it works. A lot of those things. But I think before we go into more details,
because the way they describe it, it sounds like the Deep Desert, like you go in,
Joel,
do your stuff, build like a little safe bay,
and
then export all that out by the time the reset happened.
Like going back
and then, you know, sell it up and whatnot.
I joined the project. Like, so this is 5 years ago, right? And we were talking about what is a good survival game, like because Dune, you know, we were making a Dune survival game, and we were talking about what is the vision for an end game in Dune, and the kind of the goal and the idea, at least in the beginning, was like we started with, hey, like you start by surviving in the desert, and it's that raw nature versus, you know, mankind kind of thing. It's the sun, it's the sandworms, it's the storms, but then you move into this new mode of survival, which is political survival, which is the end game of the game needs to be about these big forces, right? The Imperium is made up of the great houses, the Landsrad, the Emperor, the Spacing Guild, Chome. All of these things have an influence, and you as a player are just a small cog in the machine, but we want you to be able to feel like you're participating in this big umbrella system. And so we started there, and then we talked about, like, there's an element of, like, I think very technical game design here, where we talk about player activity cycles through the week. I was looking at, like, games like Rust. You know, Rust has their server resets, which is great for, like, people to start building up, and people really enjoy that cycle. But a lot of people also love having their stuff and not losing it. And so we talked about, like, okay, what about
like
a place,
middle ground, as long as you don't get killed and looted, that
storms,
is.
And there's scenes in the book where the sand is just tearing apart cliff faces and ripping down the things in the desert and revealing things from beneath the sand. And so we said, okay, what if we had a map, the Deep Desert, and in the Deep Desert, the landscape changes every week. How does that affect gameplay? And then we started there and we talked about, okay, what about if there's a cycle of events that we want players to go through? And again, this is a high-level design.
We might actually have an infographic.
It's like watching my stream, isn't it?
A week
when I get on my high horse about game dev.
Fun. You guys are on top of things. I know nothing. Oh, no, sorry. That's not that one. But okay. Either way, I
maybe
can just
it's
keep,
not right. Maybe we didn't.
I can just keep talking.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine. Sorry, everyone. I know it's just boring old Joel. But like we wanted to approach this right. So we were like, okay, what if there's a map that resets and the map changes every week, so that it's an infinitely explorable space? And we worked backwards from there, and we said, how do we build a lot of our game systems?
Okay, well, you'd like watching one of my stream, isn't it?
The idea of, yes, the map resets. When would we want to reset the map? Let's say we reset it on the lowest player activity day of the week, right? Which tends to be a Tuesday night or a Wednesday in these kind of online games.
That's the reason PSO we set it on Tuesday.
Activity we call scouting and cartography. And then we built a game mechanic around cartography and scouting, which I think we're going to show in a little bit. And that is, and maybe you saw it, we definitely tutorialized it in the beta, you reveal parts of the map. And then we made it so that you can save those maps and sell them to other players. So we create a loop there for players who are scouts, and that happens, let's say, you know, in a player activity week, it happens during the low ebb. The Deep Desert gets revealed. Everybody needs information. How do we make information a commodity? We create a cartography and a scouting system. Then once that information is gathered, people share it with their friends and their guilds. Then they start setting up what we call a logistics plan. How am I going to control the spaces in the Deep Desert that I want to control? What is my guild looking for? Are we looking for spice? Are we looking for unique schematics? Are we going after shipwrecks? Are we going after the ecology labs that have been revealed? Like, what are we doing this week? So then they go set up. And then the weekend, which is when the highest player activity count is, that's when people are online. And that's where people really participate in the activities in the Deep Desert, whether that is running ecology labs with their friends or shipwrecks or
to walking and killing people.
Control points in the Deep Desert. And then after the weekend, I should say, on top of this as an umbrella is the Landsrad. And the Landsrad are asking you to do activities that take place both in the Deep Desert, but also outside of the Deep Desert. Exactly. There's a lot of PvE stuff in there. And then at the end of that activity cycle, everybody votes. It sets a server-wide change, like a worldwide, I think we should say in our terminology. It changes every rule set in the world can be changed by the Landsrad. And then the Coriolis Storm happens again on a Tuesday. and we start over again with
Yeah.
a new weekly cycle. And this is kind of the vision and dream for how the end game should play out and how we would like it to work. And yeah, I mean, we'll talk about how
longer
we set
they
everything up
keep
for this
doing
to be
stuff to stop
the
it
case,
from
but
being
of course,
repetitive
no
or
plan
old.
survives first contact with
Yeah, with new
players.
quests and
So
whatnot.
Another point I would like to make is just we're a live game. We'll continue to tweak and update these things. So, but let's maybe look at and talk about it. Yeah.
Yes, let's look at some gameplay. Actually, some activities that you might be wanting to do. So we have like actually a team here that will now go into the desert.
Okay, so we've gone through the overland map
Like, this is the
we're
type
in
of
the-
shit that
we're in the shield
honestly
wall,
will
which
get
is the
me
southern
doing,
part
like, in-game stuff.
of the deep desert.
It's the PvE.
You know, adding, like,
yeah.
this type of
So
stuff on top
PvE
of that
is
being,
base.
like, the
It was
PvP
important for
as
us
well.
so that people that are scared of PvP or reluctant
Outside of
to
my
get
own
engaged with
dot
it,
hack,
they
you
had a
know,
place in the
PKing
deep desert that
nets.
they could go to without, instantly getting killed as soon as you're coming through, like in warping in, right? Gate camping or whatever from other games. And this is also where you set up your base of operations.
Yes.
The very first area, because the deep desert is gigantic. There's no water here,
Yes.
and you need to have the logistics set up.
I wonder if you can drain the blood of the people you
can go there by
kill
yourself. Like, I
in
fly there on
PvP.
beta.
Because I know you
try
get
to
no
stay away from
items
people, 'cause
out
as we
here.
said, we're not great at PvP
People,
necessarily.
people call it ratting.
Yeah,
right?
ratting.
People, you can go in and rat.
Oh, I'm totally
Rat
right.
raid.
Absolutely.
But just to point out one thing here, because these guys are using. So again, coming back to like how do we get towards this vision? We started with how do you build this is going to get wiped every week. How do we encourage people to build bases? Well, first of all, we created this blueprinting system. You bring the diagram of your base, you place it out, and you build it quickly, right? This is very fast. It doesn't take very long when you're with a few friends. You get a base put down, you build it up quickly. This is part of the logistics cycle of the deep desert.
And you can either bring the resources from Haga Basin and all the vehicles that you're bringing with you, or you can harvest there's quite a bit of resources in the shield wall.
Yep.
So you can set this up.
So this is
Good.
what's happening here. We're building.
Good
a
to know you don't have to
forwarding
go
base.
back and forth
Exactly.
if
I
you
was
want
gonna
out
say
stuff.
that this is obviously a forwarding base because it is kind of very boxy again compared to like the actual home bases that we saw earlier. Because this is all about efficiency, right?
Yes.
And like fitting your the storages and the all the machines that you need. Now my brain just stopped working. Fabricators. Thank you.
Yeah, and we made a change, or not a change. It's just the building costs are different in the deep desert, so it costs half as much to build
Yes.
everywhere.
Building
and
is
you get
faster,
100%
yep.
when you're breaking things down. Just because we know you're going to be redoing this every week.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
going to be some
Makes
loss, right?
sense.
So we're trying to make it easy and accessible in the ways that we
A little
can.
bit of
while still
disconnect there,
keeping the
but
threat there.
it makes
Yes,
sense
and the
to do
intensity,
that
right?
though.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's it, right? Like the deep desert is
Bet
a
you how
little bit
much
about that tension as well,
how
that-
much
that
items
feeling
some of
of,
these
like-
bases
so
take to
We're
build.
building here. It's the PVE area. I expect people to build their primary like weekly base in the PVE area, and then maybe set out some logistics bases so that they can do things like refining spice. And that's where it becomes an interesting kind of like we'll see how people play out these scenarios in the actual deep desert.
see
in the
and
game,
see how
but
many
this is
people
kind of
gonna attack
the expected
bases.
behavior. This is what we hope people will do. And we've tried to build all the mechanics into place so that people can do this, right? And that's been a large part of it.
You also see co-op building here. There's actually like several people working on
Yeah,
this.
everyone's working together, right?
Yeah,
And
which
that's
is super nice.
that's
too.
the guild focus as well. Like it
Exactly.
is a multiplayer game. It's really important to make sure that people can play together and do things together. And I think the fun part in this game and this style of game is that it extends beyond like the traditional MMO experience of like we can fight things together, right? And we can role play together, but you're not building things together, you're not crafting vehicles together, right? We have those options, which is nice.
Exactly.
And it's just cool to see how quick you can use the blueprint system to get like a gigantic base, right?
Yep.
Even though it's utilitarian, right? But yeah, it does what
Some
it
of the
needs.
work where you
and
can
it's,
do
yeah,
this
it's quite
also
impressive.
in the
I
PvE
know that
area as
people are also
well.
wondering that
outside
you
the
won't be
deep
able
desert, if you have a
to,
blueprint.
copy that your setup inside. So this is literally the blueprint is for the building itself. So everything inside.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You still have to put the placeables in.
So we're behind the shield wall. I think we've just left the base now,
Yeah, we're actually
and we're
just showing a little bit of the
Yeah.
PvE area here.
so this
as
is
well.
this is behind the shield wall, and then you come out into the deep desert, and this is like I think oh yeah, sorry, behind the shield wall there's also PvE elements here. This is the PvE space.
Yeah.
So there are things like shipwrecks that you can raid. There are like eco labs behind here. So there is a section of the deep desert. I know people are really worried about doing PvP. There's a whole section here. It's 24 kilometers long, where you can actually go and like do the PvE part. And
I'm
we're
gonna
about
I'm
to
gonna
see
say that a
why.
lot. I'm
This
a
will take a few
American,
seconds.
but I'm gonna
We're
assume that a
actually
lot.
in the middle of the
surveying
survey. So now we're surveying the land in this section, and we'll see the segment reveal itself. And this is like one of the PvE segments of the Deep Desert. And what you'll see here is that we've surveyed one square, and just to give some context, that's one of 81
Jesus.
squares within this map. So there are 81 of these squares. It's huge.
Yeah.
There
We're
are
actually also seeing the sync chart that you mentioned earlier
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
God, it can be interesting to see
So
how well
now,
this one,
I don't
especially
know
being
whose-
on
I don't know
Unreal.
whose name it is, but whichever player it is crafting a. They have surveyed.
Camille is
Now they're going to
crafting a
craft
survey,
a
yeah.
sync chart.
The sync
They have crafted a sync chart of the Deep Desert. It tells you in the information which sector of the Deep Desert, who created it, how long ago it was
Hey,
created, so you
A7, we're bringing
understand
back the
whether
Final Fantasy
information
11
is out of date
maps.
or in date. They're going to share that sync chart with their friends.
Yep.
And then their friends, hopefully, will be able to switch camera perspective and see their friend apply the sync chart,
is
which
the
saves
plan.
them having to
Yes.
explore.
Yeah,
So this is
exactly.
that cartography loop.
You could go out with like a
Oh.
really quick ornithopter.
Look at this. That's the Deep Desert over there.
Oh, sure.
To the left.
But you can go out with like an exploration kit, right? That's
Yeah.
really fast. That
Yes.
You can go around. You don't have much harvesting abilities, right? And then
Yeah.
you scout the area, bring it back, and then your base can roll out with your transport ornithopters,
Yeah.
your harvesters,
Exactly.
sand crawlers.
Depending what your plan is for the day.
Yeah, what
Which
people-
doesn't
what
necessarily
people
have to be PvP. There's actually a lot of other things,
Yeah,
that
exactly. I,
might
I,
bring you to
I
the
expect
Deep
people
Desert.
in guilds to be figuring things out and how they're going to work together to do these things. But there's roles here, right? Like again, we tried to really build this game with different roles for different people within guilds.
Exactly.
So the idea is, oh yeah, maybe I'm just the scout, and that's what I do because I hate, going into fights. But I go out, I bring back the information. Then people who like building bases are planning like what our logistics are going to be and what we're going to be doing this week in the Deep Desert. What do we need to harvest? What do we need for our crafting? Are there uniques that we're looking for? Are there specific uniques? I think one of the really important points about the Deep Desert is that like the unique schematics, the Imperial permits, which maybe people saw, the purple ones, they're on a limited loot setup. So you don't get the same ones every week, and the layouts of the Deep Desert change. Here we see the
Good.
trading system. The
Hey,
chart's been
nice.
traded.
And those schematics you can only
It's
make
nice
a
to have
certain
trading
amount of
again,
Yeah.
not locked
And
behind
now-
a paywall or non-existent to
We're
begin
going to
with.
consume the sync chart, and then we're going to open our map and see that the sector has been cleared, the same sector that was sync charted. So this is kind of cool. You can create copies of this and pass it off to your guild. You can create copies and sell them on the exchange to other players as well.
Yes, and while now they're
Now
actually
the
building
transport
a
ornithopter,
transport ornithopter, we can actually quickly talk about the Curious Storm in combination with the map because we actually have a visual asset here
Yeah.
that shows how they can look like on
Yeah,
the
so
map.
we can talk about the rotation. So this is
Yes.
like, so let's see that we're going to see 3 weeks of Coriolis Storm changes to the map. So this is week 1, and then we move to, and you can see that there's like one eco lab, a shipwreck, and a cave there, right, and a small base, and some spice blows that have been marked. And then to the next week, the layout has changed. Where
Same
things
tile.
are is different. There's a control point now in the bottom left. There's an eco lab in a different place, and a shipwreck that's been uncovered.
And there will be different loot and different
Different
schematics
loot
that you
in
get.
all of them. And then we go one more week again. And now you can see that this is a bit larger. There's another control point. It's a different house control point now. Different spaces on the map. A couple of eco labs this time. 4 or 5 caves and the shipwreck. So you can sort of see how this changes
that is
and how this
literally
loot
for one
encourages
quail, not
exploration
that 80
for
something they
people each
talked about a
week.
moment
and
ago.
that's one tile.
That's one section.
One of
181st.
One of 81.
Yeah.
But
81,
but I will
I
say
love
this, it's a very big desert with a lot of space. So there's not all the tiles are that populated each week. So people aren't like, oh, there's not 15 eco labs in every square, right?
No.
Like it's
Yes.
a
more
big
sparse.
barren place. And this is also like important because if we want people to fight over things, we actually need to draw them to the same places to fight
Yes.
over specific things in PvP.
Yes. So for
Alright.
the ones who actually do want the PvP, they have a place to go where they know there's probably other players there as well.
Okay, so now we have a transport ornithopter. This is the largest flying vehicle that you can craft in the game.
For now,
and this may
probably.
be my favorite game mechanic because the transport
I agree.
ornithopter can pick things up. And I love it because it can pick up almost anything that is a vehicle.
Yes.
right? in the
Including
game. So-
another
One of the things you see in the
copter.
mid game is like the buggy is really hard to get to places, right? Even though it mines so
Yes.
much more than you can ever possibly mine yourself, but it's a pain, right, to get up on the shield wall or to get it out here.
So a good tactic with the buggy though is to use it as storage and use the transporter
Yes.
ornithopter to pick
Yeah.
it up and carry it. Are we going to show an example of carrying? I guess we are.
Yes,
Yeah,
we are,
cool.
because
Yes.
what we're actually preparing for here is a spice harvesting mission.
So the team's going out to do some
yes.
spice harvesting.
So we are actually gonna
Okay.
pick up a
Yeah.
harvester.
So now we're coming out into what I call the real deep desert, right? This is actually what you think of when you think of Arrakis from the movies, right? So this is yeah, we just got the nice tutorial pop up talking about the deep desert.
Yes.
So this
perfect
is the
timing.
Arrakis that we know from the films. So Hagar Basin is like and it's taking a lot of the information that we had from the books and about like the different biomes and things and making it into a truly sort of interesting PvE experience. But this is the true deep desert of Arrakis. This is a place where people are scared to go. This is where the Fremen live. We're passing outside the shield wall now. This is where the War of Assassins and the PvP is allowed to
And a
happen.
spice blood.
And you can see a spice blow in the distance, which draws people from miles around to go there, right? And I do want to say, this section here, if you turn the camera right and left, you can see that we have the shield wall. This is 24 kilometers long. And you can't see people all the way along. So people who are like nervous about going into the deep desert because they're worried about, PvP is, I think there's like an element from my end, a designed moment that we've talked about on this project quite often is like, you come to the edge of this vast ocean and you dip your toe in the water and you're a little bit scared of sharks, but you see something in the distance and you think, I can make it. I can get there and I can get back. And the first time it's scary. And you feel that tension, and the second time, and the third time, but you feel that tension, but you actually start doing it, right? And I get that people worry about toxic behaviors and ganking and so forth, but we tried to build a space where you can get away from people as well.
Correct, yeah. So I think that's really important to talk about is in Dune, you were given the tools to get away, right? Like if overwhelming amounts of people come
Bet
after
you they fit the Dunlock.
maybe you can't quite get away, but that's generally not going to happen. So a lot of it is more about PvP is about controlling a point and like having to give up that point if you don't feel like fighting.
Yo, how you doing? Yeah, they have.
So on the lands right here, this is kind of interesting, right? So you can see the lands.
So they have announced it that there will be Twitch drops. They are going to be, from what they showed at the beginning, for now, they're probably going to be other stuff as well. But they elite stated that there were going to be some building items like walls and tables, that type of stuff. That will be Twitch drops when the game comes out. So yes, there will be. So yay on that. Especially any more so being house items. I was expecting nothing more than like maybe a can or two, but nope, they're doing house stuff for it. So we can indeed celebrate that come the 5th of next month. But how you doing, 92? Welcome. I'm catching up on the dev event since I missed it that morning.
If we claim this as the Atreides, we're going
gonna party so hard, wag.
And a Sisselrad means that we're going to get the voting power for the week. So a Sisselrad is when we can complete a row.
Yeah.
So normally,
when you get bingo, pretty much.
If you were Harkonnen and Atreides in this situation, you'd both be fighting over this particular control point because you really don't want the other one to win for the week. But normally, like it's kind of you're always blocking each other.
We found some change laying around.
Go back and
we found some of the money we had that aside for butt
fill out as many
tickets.
squares as possible. So we're trying to take the
And we're not going to be getting on the bus again to the end of the week.
This control point in the deep desert. We're in the deep desert as Atreides taking over this
that how
control
wag
point on their behalf. And you can see it's just this control point. It's a place that you have to defend in the deep desert. It'll draw other people, and it will earn you points over time. It's a classic control point in the deep desert. One other thing, just if you stop for a second here, one other thing I just wanted to point out, one of the feedbacks we had in beta was about team markers. And you can see our new team marker system in the game here. It's deliberately only for the 4-person groups. I will not allow this to be in the game for guilds because I want, especially I know people talk about Zergs. I think when Zerg guilds and there's 40 people attacking each other on the screen, if everybody can see who's in their guild, it's very easy to target the people that you're trying to Zerg. But if it's just the group, then it's much more difficult for Zergs to actually not do friendly fire. Yeah. And there is full friendly fire on guilds.
I mean,
I
they
can wait
can
to say
do
there
it
was-
if they work for it, right? They can make sure
Yeah,
everyone
man.
has the same
Was
swatches.
it
and
friendly
so on.
fire?
So there
Yeah, I
is
guess it was
ways to
friendly
do
fire
but
Figure out
they
what
have to
your
work.
in
dress
dungeons
like
and stuff as
and
well.
infiltrate, right?
Quickly
Exactly.
switch to
Yeah,
go.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's
We didn't want to take
no
away.
artificial.
Yeah, like
Yeah, I believe when the game come out, I think everyone gonna have Twitch drops. To my knowledge, I don't think they do any content Quail Pacific drops. So yeah, the way it sound like if you play in Doom come the 5th, you're gonna have Twitch drops on your account. So that way it seemed like as of now, but I get we will find out as we get closer.
it's been one of my let's say I will say this is one of those things where I have had to fight with a lot of developers on this project about this. There's a crashed ship down there, by the way. It's kind of cool that you could also go loot that. But like it's like giving too much information for free to players actually limits our ability for people to have politics and intrigue.
Yeah.
Because if I can see your name over your head, I know who you are, right? But if I can't, if I don't know who that is, and you dress in my clothing and you walk into my base and you follow me around, it's like I might just think that you're my friend from the guild, when in fact you're just like, you know,
A buy.
trying to infiltrate. And we want to allow that possibility because that is Dune. At its core, that is how things work. There are plans within plans, there are groups within groups.
I remember that from early on, where your kind of low.
Also, we got the whole
Yeah, for sure.
being
Does
close
that
to each
very
other
well,
boy
right?
champ.
Can I just point out that we just
Very
crossed
cool.
a server border?
Yeah.
Like
Sure.
our game has server meshing tech in the deep desert, and it's been a very painful technical thing to get working.
Bet you
Yes.
will. Will.
But we just crossed a server border. You probably might not have even noticed any sort of hitching or anything because it's very seamless. And again, shout out to our technical team who've been
Yes,
working their
yeah.
butts off to get this in good shape. But we just crossed a server border from one server to another, and it's basically not visible, which is great.
Yeah, what we call like authority transfer.
Authority
where you move
transfer
it-
between
yeah.
servers, yeah. So now we're picking up a random sandcrawler and bringing it out to the spice harvesting field. So, I mean, I love that. I love that mechanic. I think it's fantastic fun in the game, just picking things up.
The transport ornithopter is quite slow,
Yeah, it's very slow.
so it is dangerous to go out just in the transport ornithopter.
And you can of course
Especially if
sit
you're gonna get
in
shot
the
down.
harvester
Yes.
while being
Yeah, yeah,
transported,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is really fun too.
You can also,
Yes.
I think the transport
can-
also has like 5 seats as well. So
Yes,
there's,
yeah.
you can bring a whole little group with you.
Or have them standing on
kidnap
top.
other enemy harvesters as well, which is also super fun to do.
But we should talk about spice because
Yes.
that's really ties
Yeah.
the entire end game together, right? So
Yeah.
all the tier, the tier 6 or the last like set of resources, right? Everything requires spice to craft
Okay.
it. So your end game gear, your end game tools,
Yep.
end game vehicles.
Everything in game requires spice for crafting.
So they moved it
and also,
away
we
from
mentioned the
being
lance rad. The lance rad has
everything,
always
like
the
they
center
originally
square of the
talked
lance rad
about.
requires spice to win. It's important. The sandcrawler is like, it's not the full harvesters that you've seen in the films. Those are owned by the big houses. But as you can see here,
Yeah.
this is like a little like raid event. We just placed a thumper on the sand. We have a guy on a bike. He's
Exactly.
riding around dropping thumpers.
You should also hear it actually on
Yeah.
stream now. You hear
Yeah.
The thumpers
Gotta-
are
gotta
really
keep
important
the
because
worm away.
sandworms roam the deep desert. They will be coming, and you need to be placing out thumpers to distract them away from that sandcrawler while it's harvesting spice. And you want to keep it on the spice as long as possible, just like in the book. You want to
I wonder how easy it is to tell. Like, obviously in the beta, yeah, you can see like them like moving around.
Yeah, so the sandworm stops being, it not stops, but it's less of a threat as you're going throughout Hoggy Basin. and
But I
then
wonder-
again, but then at the
I wonder
end
if it's
game, right,
easier to
there's
tell
sandworms
now.
all over the place, and it becomes a threat again.
Especially out
especially
here.
when you're trying to get spice from the sands.
So yeah, so you saw the sandworm just took that thumper. Hopefully our intrepid thumper places have put out more of them.
They're
Yeah.
totally well organized. They have like several people placing out thumpers.
Yeah.
They have like the scouts here in the air that we see as well, which is really
Well, that
cool.
woman trying to eat one of the chopped
Plus
or chopped.
our transport to be ready for any kind
Yeah.
of danger that
And-
might occur.
And so as soon as the sandcrawler, like the person driving the sandcrawler knows that they're the target of the sandworm, they need to radio in and be like, get me off the sand, so that the transport ornithopter will pick them up. But at the moment, I think we're using the thumpers effectively as a team. And this is a part of it, right? Like, this is why the deep desert is very Dune. I don't think you have this experience in any other game. And the idea was to create this. So if you are here with your guild, there's something to do and it's fun and it's interesting, But then other players might show up as well, and that's where it becomes another step, right?
So you're saying it's not just reskin Conan Exiles? Is that what you're saying, Sean?
We can talk about what the word reskin means. We can talk about, like, you know, that some of the best games in the world are reskins of other games.
So you
not
see
wrong.
here, though, that there is a lot of sandworms that are popping up here constantly,
Yes.
which is both fantasy but also terrifying.
There is
Yes.
a limit to how much they will eat thumpers, right?
Yes.
They do eventually get annoyed.
Eventually
There's
they
like,
have enough.
I'm not that dumb, right?
yeah.
Like,
They'll eat thumpers for a while.
I see what you're doing here.
They have a diverse palate.
Yes. But yeah, this is like.
You also see nicely the scouts around. To see like also potentially looking out for sandstorms coming in. Of course, they're kind of
Worm
devastating
sign.
in this particular worm signs. Enemies.
I wonder how
coming in
quickly
as well.
sandstorm actually
Yeah.
happens in the deep
So yeah,
desert.
it's, this is kind of the experience of.
'Cause I think it was
harvesting
what,
spice in
like,
the deep desert from a large
From the
spice
beta,
blow.
but like
And there are
every
smaller spice
like
blows,
30-ish
you can come
minutes,
to with a smaller guild.
depending on where you was on the map, of
You
course.
also have
But
the
you know,
Tonga Basin,
desert
of
can
course.
hit,
Yes.
or
There's
sandstorm
just a
can
couple
hit,
ones
it will
in
hit
Haga
your
that's very
area.
limited because we wanted spice to
But
be
you can
a
still
rare
see it.
resource that you need to go out here and
It's like a
get.
tornado. You just gotta
talking
watch
about,
it and see
like,
where it's gonna
concentration
go.
of people, like the spice blow, you can see from really far away,
Yeah.
Yes.
like
Yeah.
20 plus kilometers
Yes.
away. So you do need to bring some friends to be looking out for other people coming in.
Yep.
There's another thumper down there. So I know we've seen some comments from people that are like, well, you have to go into the deep desert to get like the highest type of gear and
Gotta
such.
verify about the selling bit again.
What
That
do
is
we?
not true. We have the exchange. We just
Yeah.
showed that before.
You
right?
were set up on the player
you can be
market, you
somebody
get out
that
here.
is making something that a person on the exchange would want, right? That goes into the deep desert to get spice or to get, you know, like some schematics. They can go to Arakeen or Hargo Village, post that, you know, and then you can trade it on the exchange. Or you can meet up in person and trade with the
Picking up the
PvP.
crawler.
I think there might have been some we can't hear it though, but there might have been some rumblings and some indication that
Yep. We I think that
some
they got worm sign
big
and they need to move.
threads is
We
potentially
do have a
coming.
known bug in the game where the spice color disappears from the sand.
It's still there. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's happening.
Well,
Oh,
There he is.
That's why they
And there's the
you can
grandfather
actually hear
one.
that
that's shy.
It's great seeing the little.
Almost got
sandworm.
H out.
Little tiny one on the side. You can see the scale.
little baby like getting into the action there.
This is the ring mouth one.
That's the ring mouth, yeah.
And
The,
that's gonna swallow everything
that
that's
one's
in the
big, yeah,
middle.
yeah.
They're like just everything there is lost.
It
and
takes
it's
the
like
lot. But these guys managed to succeed and they can take their haul out of the deep desert today with them.
very well prepared.
Yeah.
They were well
Very
prepared.
well prepared. So as our crew here is now going back to actually maybe we can explore a little bit because we do actually have Imperial testing stations here as well, and I think we're actually somewhat close to one if I remember correctly. So we can maybe show that from above as well. Again, to just bring it in that there is a
You know
lot
what
of
interesting that
content
ain't the
in,
chopper
the
can
deep
have like the
desert that is
warning
not
about
just,
the
like, flat out
swarm.
PvP, right? So we really
Yeah, yeah.
want to
Correct. And this is our high-end PvE encounters happen in the deep desert. So the eco labs or ecological testing stations.
Yeah. Oh,
they're
yeah.
actually 2 and
Apologies.
4 players. Yeah. So it's the main PvE challenge would be out here where you're going to get those unique schematics that we were talking about earlier. But you need to scout, you need to find them, and then you need to perhaps fight over them.
And work as a team. I think these are tuned towards minimum 4 people.
Yeah.
We actually showed one in our combat stream.
Yeah, in the second
which
part,
was
yeah.
just like
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
exactly. They're like kind of wave based, kind of very different approach than the Imperial testing stations that we have in Haga Basin.
Yeah,
And
and they're
the-
different
that's-
every week.
It's the entrance
Yes.
to Colby Station. And you know, like as the game continues, as we go through live and we continue to update and expand, there'll be more things that show up on the map, for example, Fremen Sieges and things like that, that people would expect to explore. So things will be
Exactly.
uncovered. And as I mentioned, like the layouts for the deep desert, they're handcrafted. We have a cool system where we like build the layouts by hand
Hey Joe,
and generate the spaces.
catching up
between
on
them
what
with
I
the
meant
sand.
today
it's
on
kinda like
the
we fill
Dune
in
stream.
the gaps with the sand. But like
the whole
we
stream
have-
pretty much been
we are
mid to
building
end game.
new layouts for this all the time.
And talking about some
And
of the
then over
stuff that
time
was
we'll
a problem
incorporate
in the
more and
beta.
more elements. So there'll be always something to do. That's the.
But yeah, right now
the
they're
killer
going
of
over the
infinite
in-game deep
exploration.
desert
That's one of the
PvP
goals,
area.
is to create a space that's always explorable. And something else I'd like to say that I think is like important is we will add, like we have the DLCs and things coming for the game. We'll be adding things in the DLCs, but the deep desert will always remain something that we consider to be at the zenith of the power curve.
I'm gonna
in the game,
crash
so we'll
it.
keep
And
adding
we establish
to the
all
deep
the ore.
desert.
I'm
So
gonna
let's
end up
say that
whacking
we
it.
have tier 5 items in the game and we go to tier 7, then the deep desert will start to have tier 7 equipment and items and things.
Maybe.
in it as well.
We will
We'll
see
always
how
try to
awake
keep
I
it
am
on
by the end
par
of
with
that
anything
wag.
else we add in terms of power.
Tonight
Because
might
the
be a
deep
short
desert really
dream with the
is
2
that-
hours
that
sleep.
continually explorable
The
space.
central point that keeps all of the things
Yeah,
together.
we'll continue to add like stuff, and there will be like in DLCs there'll be places where people can get access to gear that is currently in the deep desert, right? When we do that, we'll also increase the deep desert and make sure that there's more things. So that's kind of the long-term goal, is to continue updating the game and continue adding this stuff.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. To also ensure players about that.